Good afternoon, you all. My name is John, and I work at United World College. 2 years ago, I went there for a cup of coffee, and basically I never left. In order to understand that story, you need to first know, you need to first know about my mom. So let me introduce you to her. I don't see any slides. Yeah, thank you. Just like me, my mom was born in a family that worked in hospitality. She started working in her parents' bars when she was 15, and later on she took it over along with my dad. She worked 6 days a week from 10 in the morning till 2 at night, and not only serving food and drinks to the customers, but more or less also being like a social worker, mending broken hearts, teaching lessons in life, stuff like that. And next to that, she was also a very dedicated housewife. She was a mate and a partner to my dad, and she was a lovely mother for me and my sister. One day a week, our bar was closed, and we would always go out after school to play pinball in one of the other bars in the area. And now, yeah, it's not really stable. And in the evenings then she would cook lovely family dinners or sometimes even entertain guests. And one day per year, our bar was closed and we would go on holidays, always to the same places, and those places are chiseled in my memory. The first place we would go to would be Ostend, on the Belgian coast. And I don't know about you, how many of you have experienced Belgian summers. Let me tell you, they aren't all sunny and warm. Nevertheless, I still have sweet memories of a tall ship that we used to visit, or the horse track where we would go and see the races. But the best part of those holidays were the shrimps, who would get them fresh from the boats. And the four of us would go duwen, draaien, trekken, duwen, draaien, trekken, duwen, draaien, trekken. Or push, twist, peel, because we had to peel them ourselves before we could eat them. They were yummy. In other years, we would go to Clairvaux, which is a tiny city in the north of Luxembourg. And there was a castle, and in the courtyard of the castle, there was a tank and a cannon, and we would climb on it, and I would imagine myself being a brave soldier, rescuing us from the invaders and stuff. And every morning, when we had a walk through the village, we would end up in that castle. There's a little bar, and I would always be given a 20 Luxembourg franc coin. So I could put that in the jukebox and play some music. And I even remember the numbers I had to press to play my mom's favorite song. And that was Gigi L'Amoroso by Dalida. It seemed like a very worry-free childhood. My sister and I, we never felt neglected or ignored. But from my mom, the attention she could give us was never enough.
Gigi?
Nevertheless, we sometimes had talks about how our future would be. And she always would say, if you ever dare to take on a job in hospitality, ik stamp dich onder de vod, I'll kick you in the butt, because you will never have chance to spend time with your kids. So, taking to heart my mom's advice, I decided to break with the family tradition. And I went to the university in Nijmegen and started studying Spanish language and literature. But with my family's background in hospitality, I was soon involved in all kinds of student activities. And we organized parties, not just for the department, but also on a wider scale. And we started organizing trips to Spain, stuff like that. So basically you could say that I learned more from life than from my books, because it dawned to me more and more that my passion was more in hospitality. Although, of course, my career was supposed to take a different path. The biggest lesson in life, though, came when I was halfway through university. My mom had a terrible cough and a back pain, and she went to the doctor, and he listened through the stethoscope and heard something that he couldn't really identify. So he sent her off for an X-ray and some further investigation. And that same night, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and admitted to the hospital. Two days later, they took out half a lung, half of her left lung, and the tumor as big as a large grapefruit. Now I can tell you, based on the cell structure of that tumor, it was concluded that it was no older than 6 weeks. Fortunately, radiotherapy removed the last bits and pieces that the doctors couldn't take out during the surgery, and my mom recovered pretty fast. She had a lust for life and things looked good, until about half a year later. New spots were found on an X-ray during a periodical checkup, and this time the cancer had affected her right lung. And that made surgery impossible, because you can live with one lung, but not with two halves. The cancer was even more aggressive, and chemo didn't work. So within a few weeks, my mom was released from the hospital with the message that she had probably another 2 to 3 weeks to live. My mom was a fighter, and she was not at all going to let that happen. It was only June, and she had so many plans for the summer. She wanted at least to celebrate her birthday in August. In September, though, my mom's health rapidly deteriorated, and I was called back from university. I needed to help my dad and my sister to take care of her. We had to feed her, change diapers, wash her, all those things that my mom did to me when I was a little kid. And all those things I was not prepared for. She was put on morphine to help her endure the pain. But that also caused her to sleep most part of the day. And during the nights, my dad and I took turn to stay awake next to her bed. I prayed many hours for her suffering to end, but my mom was not yet ready to let go. Until that one night, when I was on night watch, she let one final breath and died right next to me. "44 years old. I was 22, and I had just had the worst experience of my life. On a sunny September day in 1989, we put my mom to rest in one of the most beautiful spots in Maastricht, on the mountain overlooking the city. And I made a promise on that very same day to myself and to her that in my life I would only do those things that I really liked, and that I would stop doing those things that I didn't like anymore. I had just had proof that life can be over way too soon, and I was going to make the most of it. I was going to live life for the both of us. My mom was not an unhappy person, but I think she would have wanted to do things differently, not just work, but also spend time on the things that really matter in life. And that's why I profoundly swore that I would not do anything I did not like anymore. It may not come as a surprise then that I decided to quit university. Picture this. It's the early 90s, no internet, the dark corners of the Netherlands. And I thought that I would do it by organizing an erotic affair with shops and shows and everything. We created Extravaganza. It was like a fairy tale-like bubble in which everyone was equal, in which everyone could be themselves and express themselves in the way they wanted to, even if it were just for one day. Obviously, my mom has never been there. But I know that she would be very, very proud of me and of what we had achieved. For 5 years, we toured the Netherlands and we did all the big venues of the country. But then it was, again, time to go our separate ways, and I decided to leave the company. A friend of mine said, "Hey, I know a place you would really like." She was already working there, and I also decided to apply for a job at Vodafone. So when I was invited for an interview, they asked me, "Why do you want to work for Vodafone?" And I said, "Well, actually, I already had the best job in the world, so now I'm looking for the second best job." And they asked what this best job was. So for the rest of the interview, we only talked about that. The same night, they called me and asked me, "Can you start tomorrow?" So I did. Working for Vodafone was actually pretty rewarding. I started off as a customer services agent, but I got to do a lot of things. I was involved in many new products and services for support and stuff. I did process and project management, and I ended up managing a team of 20 technical support staff. And you could say I was pretty happy with my achievements and with my life. Until I turned 44, the age my mom died. It proved to be a very special year in which I did a lot of thinking. About my mom, obviously, but also about life, about the meaning of life, about its purpose, and about my purpose in it. And then I was given the opportunity to do a 2-week volunteer trip to Kyrgyzstan for a charity that was very dear to me, Dance for Life. And they educate young people all over the globe about HIV and sexual health. And I worked there with local volunteers, people in the age of 11 to 18, and I was captured by their enthusiasm. And I was overwhelmed by their gratitude for what I did for them. And I just took pictures and I just spoke to them. So after that trip, I returned home with even more life questions to ask and more stuff to think about. Then a few months later, the entire customer service management from Vodafone was dragged into an offsite, a 3-day training on thinking differently and the big why. Well, basically, that was stuff I had been thinking about all year. My colleagues were pretty cynical, but for me, it was nothing new. On the first day, they gave us an assignment. We got a little wooden board. And on that board, we had to illustrate our drives in life on one side. What do you wake up for in the morning? what drives you, what makes you tick. And on the other side, we had to illustrate our barriers, the things that keep us from achievement, our inhibitions. And while most of my colleagues were pretty hesitant, I was done in 2 minutes. On one side, I drew a big red sparkly heart. And on the other side, a big black cross. It all makes perfect sense. But then it dawned that I probably would have to share the story of my mom and the promise that I made to her and myself with those people, because that's what this is all about. And I was, how could I think of that? Oops. But no one asked about the board, and at the end of the day, the board went back to my room. Only the last afternoon of the training session, we were told to pick up the board, and I felt adrenaline, pretty much like now. My heart was racing, and then our trainer said, well, you don't have to say anything about the board. And I was like, huh? Why did we make it? They just wanted to break through our inhibitions. And for that, they put it on 2 building blocks and put the board on it with the inhibition side up. And with a bare hand karate chop, we just had to break through the inhibitions. And I thought, well, I can do that. And when it was my turn, it was still pumping. And I was like, oh my God. So I hit, and I hit hard. And I broke the board. But I was a little uncontrolled, and I did not only break the board, but also one of the bricks. And my hand, it hurt. But I didn't notice. Adrenaline was still pumping. And I couldn't calm down, so in the end, I said to our trainer, I think I have to share the story after all. And when I did, you could hear a pin drop in the room. But also, people saw pieces of the puzzle falling together. My story moved a lot of people, and in the end, it also added value to the training. Okay. In those years that followed, I got less and less joy in my work, and I involved myself in more and more other activities in the company. Because of the balance that I got, it made me feel better at work again. I involved myself in the staff association, organized many fun events and trips and stuff. But I was also one of the initiators of the first Vodafone Gay Pride celebration. And those extra things, that extra appreciation that I got through the company, was a good balance to get back my joy in work. Then in 2014, they announced a reorganization within customer services that would also involve a cutback in management. And I started questioning myself again. I asked myself 4 questions. Do I still like my job? Do I still like Vodafone? What would I achieve? And how can I do that? And basically my conclusion was that I still like my job and I still liked Vodafone. But most of the things that I liked were not really involved with my daily tasks. Overnight I decided that I would volunteer for a buyout, and I would save colleagues from a forced dismissal. But then what? What was I going to do after Vodafone? Well, I decided once more to follow my heart and turn passion into profession. I created 2 companies, and I was going to do the stuff that I was good at. I was going to organize events like I had done many times. And I was going to cook fine dinners like I'd done for my friends many, many times. I was going to learn more about wine and champagne, and I was going to do something about that. So I created my event service, and I organized trips and parties, and I'm a wedding planner, and I work as a cook in festivals, stuff like that. And with my web shop, I sell only champagnes and other bubbly wines. And why the bubbly wines? Because I feel genuinely that not only Christmas, but every day deserves the extra sparkle. Okay, so how did I end up here? As a startup, obviously, my agenda wasn't full from day one. And someone asked me, hey, can you come and help out HR for a couple of hours a week at United World College? And I was like, I don't know that. So I decided to plan a visit. And I can tell you, I was sold immediately. The vibe in the school, the energy from the students, the pleasantness and the people that I met. The same day I got my staff badge. But helping out soon changed in a full-time contract. So now I have 2 businesses and a 40-hour side job. But it's a joy to work there. I feel part of an incredibly amazing community. So basically, that's it. My name is John. I work at UWC. I came there for a cup of coffee, and I never left. Thank you.